The rumours regarding the camera bump on iPhone 17 continue, as well as news about a smaller dynamic island. Wow, such groundbreaking changes that are going to revolutionise the world. Let's delve in. So leakers have been going back and forth on the new camera module we could see with the iPhone 17 Pro. For those unaware, initially we were expecting a new horizontal layout similar to Pixel devices, which would make this iPhone stand out compared to every other iPhone since the 11 Pro, which has had the same stove camera layout. However, there is a reason Apple's firmly stuck to this design, and it's not because they're lazy, it's because the lenses are at equal distance from each other, which allows for seamless switching between the lenses. But also the positioning of the camera now helps the iPhone record spatial video, and so moving the lenses around could break these aspects of the camera experience, hence why other leakers have been suggesting the stove design is going to remain, but Apple's going to be incorporating a part aluminium part glass back cover. And that's what John Prosser now shows us in a new video. This is in fact suspiciously similar to a sketchy CAD render we got a few weeks ago, which Mr. Mark Gurman is very sure is wrong. And so it goes without saying, guys, take everything with a grain of salt. Now diving into John Prosser's render, we can see this has the familiar triple lens layout, but the LiDAR scanner, mic and flash have moved to the right side, and we see an aluminium panel at the top now, and there is a two-tone finish, which is interesting. As much as I like that Apple is changing things up supposedly, this also is still pretty bland and reminds me of Poco phones, and so yeah, I will have to see the real deal first before I can properly judge this design. But you know what I'll judge you for not doing? If you don't take a minute to subscribe. What a horrible segue, but I'm going to stick with it because I would appreciate the sub. It's free and will bring the latest about Apple right to your subscription box, so please consider it. Join the Saranbyte gang now. Moving on, we have news about a smaller dynamic island coming to the 17 Pro Max courtesy of Chinese leaker Digital Chat Station. They've given us very technical details where apparently there will be a new meta lens for Face ID that integrates the transmitter and receiver components. Whatever that means, I'm not going to pretend like I totally know what that is. When I think of meta, only Zuck's face comes to mind, but basically, to put it in layman's terms, they're shrinking the Face ID components, and that allows the island to be smaller. Now, as per the norm in the world of leaks, we have people going against this report, specifically Min-Chi Kuo, but if I were to predict, I could see this happening, because we've now had 3 generations of iPhone with the same cutout, the iPhone 14 Pro, the 15 and the 16 series, and so after 3 generations, Apple likes to give us a visual overhaul, and so a smaller island would make sense. Also, a smaller island would still make this recognizable as an iPhone, since Android phones usually have a much smaller cutout just for the camera, though I do think eventually the iPhone will have to adopt that, or hopefully under display cameras get good enough and we get a distraction-free display. But there is one aspect of this rumor that does not make sense to me, and that's the Pro Max only getting this new smaller cutout. Yes, in the past the Pro Max has got exclusive features, but usually won't be visual changes. For example, the 15 Pro Max had a 5x telephoto, which the regular Pro did not get, but of course on the back the phones looked identical, and so ideally a small island should come to both the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max, with the regular 17s then keeping the larger island for another year, just so there's a visual difference between the regular and Pro devices. Okay, enough about the design changes which ultimately won't make a difference. Let's now talk about thermal upgrades. So courtesy of Chinese tech site MyDrivers, apparently the complete iPhone 17 range will adopt a vapor chamber heatsink for better thermals. This technology is already popular in the Android space, and if you're wondering how it works, essentially these chambers spread heat evenly across a large surface area, and this prevents thermal throttling so that of course the device maintains its peak performance for longer. This is great news for the Genshin Impact nerds who game on their phones for many hours, but it's not just a benefit for gamers. Taking lots of photos and videos can heat up your device, and so improved thermals will improve the camera experience as well, since a phone likely won't be forced to dim the screen to make up for overheating. Now of course I do want to mention the iPhone 16 models did have thermal upgrades which made a difference in my testing. I believe they had included a graphene sheet to dissipate heat, but a vapor chamber will make a bigger difference when you're pushing the device in extreme conditions, like gaming or heavy use of the camera as I had mentioned, and ultimately I'll take any thermal upgrades. Considering this is coming to the iPhone 17 Air 2, this is a net positive because that device is going to be razor thin, and so Apple investing in thermals will prevent that device from overheating, and when you're including it on the iPhone 17 Air, you might as well bring it to the rest of the iPhone 17 range as well. Now some of you guys might be a little confused. I keep saying the iPhone 17 Pro is going to have a part aluminium, part glass design, because you're probably thinking to yourself, wait up, the Pro phones have titanium, right? Well, apparently Apple's scrapping that and they're switching back to aluminium. And you may be thinking why? Well, I think a big reason could be color choices. We all know the color choices on the Pro phones are pretty plain compared to the regular models, and it's partly because the titanium chassis on the Pro phones are very hard to color in bright shades. And so maybe Apple's moving to aluminium just so they can give us some fun new colors on the Pro phones for once, especially since nowadays functionally phones are not very different. If Apple gives these Pro consumers bright shades of red, green or blue for once, that could get people to upgrade. I think another side reason could simply be cost. Maybe titanium is just too expensive for Apple to continue using, and so they want to widen their profit margins and use aluminium instead. Yes, there will be a compromise with the durability of the device, since titanium is a tougher material, but if it comes in fun colors, I don't think people are going to mind. Anyway, let's now move on to the iPhone 17 Air. Essentially, for those out of the loop, the plus size is dead. It's not been selling well, and it's funny because that was brought in as a replacement for the Mini, which was also not selling well. So what I've learned from this is that we don't really need a fourth iPhone in the range, but Tim thinks otherwise because they've gone back to the drawing boards, and this time they're giving us a new slim model. So this is rumored to be called the iPhone 17 Air, which yes would make sense based on what Apple's done in the past. Though do note as of late, Air actually does not mean thinnest product anymore. For example, the iPad Air is actually thicker than the iPad Pro, so the name has kind of lost its meaning over the years, but for a product like this, Air would make sense because it is going to be crazy thin. We're hearing this could be thinner than the iPhone 6, yes, the bendy iPhone, and could apparently be 5 to 6 millimeters in thickness, which is pretty insane when you consider the current Pro phones are 8.25 millimeters in thickness. Now, if you're worried about how durability is going to be with such a thin device, do remember the iPad Pros are actually still going to be thinner than the rumored iPhone 17 Air, and that had no bending issues as such. And so I'm sure Apple can do the engineering magic to prevent another Bengate situation. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching. So recently there's been conflicting rumors regarding the iPhone SE4 coming with a notch or dynamic island, but now credible display analyst Ross Young chimes in and tells us we should see, drumroll, a notch. Which is not surprising, I told you guys. I've been saying since day one that Apple wants its iPhone to look more dated compared to newer iPhone models, and so a notch does just that when the rest of the range of course has an island. And yes, I know some of you guys had mentioned that sales are slow in key countries like China right now, and so Apple may not want to risk the iPhone looking too outdated, which is a fair point, but then again, Apple would rather you buy higher end iPhones. The smartphone market has matured, and so whilst they're not shipping as many iPhones as before, if they can get